direct misfire, talking many war games. Ben, some, and Spoon are taking aim. Comment, like, and subscribe today, keeping you notified and up to date.
Hello champs, and welcome once again to another direct Misfire Missive. Joining me today, as always, is Spoon and Selic as we talk hobby and community question answering and whatnot. How are you guys?
Yeah, really good.
Not too bad.
Good. Not too bad for a Tuesday night. It's a bit warm in this room, but I can't turn the fan on because otherwise you'll hear it and it'll be annoying for the listener. So let's get into it. We've got a lot of questions to answer, but we'll start off with hobby. What's been going on?
Yeah, I'll jump in first here, guys, because I know that you guys have been working on a fair bit more than I have. But I guess the big ticket items for me has been, the major thing was getting the Dragon Empire Kickstarter coming in. So that's going to be my elves. So yeah, that's the big thing for me. So that's all.
How long were you waiting for that?
It's only been, and I'll say only, it's probably about 7 months, and the models have come out amazing. I know, Benson, you haven't seen them yet, but I'll bring them over tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they've come out a really good, so for everyone at home, they're 3D printed samurai-based or Japanese-based miniatures. And I'm gonna
3D sculpted.
Yeah, they're looking very, very impressive. So Dragon.
And how much of an army did you get? Was it a full 2,000? Was it more or less?
It'll be 2,000 of elves. So obviously they're a little bit more of an elite army, but yeah, so 2,000 points. Looks very, very good.
Cool. And yourself, Spoon?
Been working with an airbrush. I'm trying to teach myself how to use the damn thing properly. I've had it for about 2 years and have only ever really used it to do base coats, but now I'm doing a bit of terrain to teach myself. So I've been working on 4 citadel forests that are starting to get a bit tedious, taking a long time
After
to do.
this, no more forests.
Yeah, no more forests. I've had enough.
More twisted terrain.
Yes.
Houses.
Yes.
Just as exciting.
I'll put a few of those together. Emma's helped me, but started painting one, and I've got some cool steampunk stencils to try on the sides of the building. Which,
nice.
Yeah. More pics to
Is
come.
that it?
Yeah, I think so.
Just airbrushing?
Just airbrushing.
Getting your skills up?
Yeah.
Alright, fair
What
enough.
about you?
I have a lot, and I'm probably going to forget a whole bunch of it. Since the last cast, which was a little while ago
Probably
now.
2016.
Yeah, about that. All the game systems. So, 40k, I finished the 1,000 point army for a tournament. So that took a little while. And then we had Malifaux to paint, not just mine, but another one of our gaming buddies for tournaments again.
Yep.
And the weekend just passed, that was a Malifaux tournament, and that's where I posted that video for the little puppet guy and the display board that kind of looks like it's set in a theatre, or is a theatre.
Yeah, look good.
Working on, or just about to finish, another regiment of lesser obsidian golems, so that can snap in with the other regiment that I've got to make a horde. And I can't remember what else I got. Twisted, as you know, assembled that. Haven't started painting them because of other things.
What's Twisted?
Dystopian Wars.
Yep.
Got a whole bunch more boats and some more planes came in yesterday. So I don't know why I did that, but it's happened. I think that's all I'm going to remember at the moment. I'm just preparing for Cancon, and our mate Hugh, he might be attending, so the continuation of the rebasing of Skaven to Ratkin will continue.
How much more does he have? Is there a lot?
He's got a lot.
Okay.
He's got a lot. So he's got a 1,000 point army ready to go now, and like clan rats and Vermintide and all that junk needs to be based, and characters on mounts and stuff.
Cool.
Yeah. At least most of his miniatures are painted. Not fantastic because they were second hand.
Yep.
But it should be easy enough to transfer to
Cool.
base for multi-basing.
Hmm.
But that's a little bit of hobby that I've been doing.
That's a little bit.
Monstrous amount.
Yeah. Working
Sounds like
away.
we've done nothing, Salek, and Ben's done it all.
Yeah, I just mentioned that I had a package turned up, and he's just listed like 4 model ranges. That's
Oh, yeah, I bought something and it was delivered. What about you?
so. We will actually discuss. I know that you were doing the Ratkins there for Cancon, but before we get to Cancon, we've actually had Steve Evans ask a question about Vanguard. So obviously the new Mantic skirmish that's come through, and just some initial thoughts. So I'll probably throw this one over to Spoon. What are your initial thoughts on Vanguard?
I've been waiting for them, Mantic, to start talking about this skirmish game that they've wanted to make for a while, and I have been watching the blog updates. Looks interesting. I don't know what's going to happen Kickstarter wise. I'll keep an eye on it. If it's just a book, maybe I'll get it on release. I'd like to play a few games. I'm wondering when they're going to release beta rules or something so we can have a play around. That would be cool. It's going to be great that the models you can transfer from Kings of War into Vanguard and vice versa for your heroes and whatnot.
Smart.
Yeah.
So you're not a massive fan of Kickstarter, are you?
Not a huge fan. I've backed a few, but
It seems like you've backed more than just a few. It seems to be like your main way of procuring items is through
Yeah,
Kickstarter.
I'm pretty
Believe it
sure
or not,
your
though.
second bedroom is full of Kickstarter. So
nah, that's the shed. Most of mine are actually board games when I had a look at it the other day, so but they're all still coming.
Yes,
So-
it's still from Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So
hopefully
before you
they'll-
sort of move away there, Spoon, you've had a look at the Vanguard models, so obviously the 3D images. What are your
and the
initial
3D
thoughts on
renders,
those?
those
Yeah.
Night Stalkers look amazing. Wowie.
Mhm.
And there's a Basilean?
Yep.
Basilean?
Cillian?
That's the lane.
There we go.
Basilean.
I knew I'd get corrected. Hero, that looks really cool. I'm excited to see those hounds though. The Night Stalker hounds have me craving a bit more.
Mm.
They
Half a
look really
mongrel.
cool. Yeah. Do you reckon they're going to have a model range that goes alongside this Kickstarter, or?
I believe they would release miniatures with it. I don't think it'll just be rules and a rule book. I mean, why would you create these renders and then just have them sit there?
I think the good business model there would be to release individual models, but also units of it, so that they can be transferable into Kings of War. I think that'd be the smartest thing.
Yep,
Hmm.
agreed.
My only dislike for the whole thing so far, I just wish they'd finish a model range before they jumped into something else. But I suppose this helps.
Well, I think you kind of need to drip feed. You can't just dump an entire army and say, there you go, that's done. Now you're not going to get anything until the rest of these other armies are going to be
Okay, so don't do a
filled out.
G-dub.
Huh?
Don't do a G-dub.
In what way?
Well, when they release a new codex, it's usually a whole new bunch of models,
And then nothing.
and then nothing. For a long time.
Yeah, I think you need to stagger it.
Yeah.
You need to keep people interested.
I would also be very interested. I'm obviously a businessman, so I'd be very interested in how Mantic's actually using this to bankroll themselves with capital. So they may actually be using Vanguard to enhance their model ranges. So that's how I would do it if I was them. Yeah, I'm pretty interested to see where this all pans out over the next 12 months.
I really like the way or the direction that the Night Stalkers are taking, just going by the concept art. I really thought that was quite creepy. Having things with no heads and mouths in their stomachs and unusual forms.
That's really weird.
I really like that idea. And it was different to what I had imagined, which is also pleasantly surprised.
So I guess to answer Steve's original question of our thoughts about Vanguard,
Excited.
yeah, I'm very excited just to see where it's all going to go. I'm generally not a massive, smaller skirmish game fan. However, because it's a pickup straight out of my existing army of Kings of War, that actually makes me a lot happier and more welcoming for Vanguard.
I mean, I like what it will do for the background as well, because having played more Dungeon Saga recently, it kind of, for me anyway, fleshes out the world, and I'm sure Vanguard will do the same thing.
Yep. So you're thinking a lot more fluff.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think this will also be a gateway game for those that are just getting into the hobby.
It's a big step from a skirmish thing to, all right, now paint 300 figures.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you start skirmish level and then work your way up.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think the numbers they're talking at the moment was the 12 to 30ish models.
Oh, okay, that's more than what I'd thought.
Well, this is what I'm hearing from a YouTube
Sure.
channel. So,
Yeah.
that's what I saw this morning. Anyway, I think it was 10 to
Okay.
30. But yeah, obviously your more elite armies have less, and probably undead, goblins, that sort of thing. Your higher end
Yep.
model numbers.
Terrain would be an interesting thing. Hopefully they release a range of terrain as well.
Yeah, they just didn't you back one that they just did?
Huh?
What was that? The terrain crate?
Ah, yeah, I did do that.
Was that
but,
Mantic?
Yes.
Yep.
But that's like barriers and walls and bric-a-brac, not like
Not proper
towers
terrain.
and buildings and stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking more display board bits for myself, with the
Yeah.
occasional bit of junk that we can throw in for a skirmish game. But yeah,
Well, there we go. So,
hopefully that's answered.
Yep. Oh, I think we can nail that one away. Thanks, Steve, for the shout out there. But I
Thank
guess
you.
we sort of move on now to the biggest tournament in Australia, over in Cancon. And I know that everyone's sort of slowly working towards, not just us three here, but also everyone else in Australia is working toward Cancon. So
Mm-hmm.
what are you bringing? I'd be very interested. I know that everyone's got a few armies, but what are you bringing, Spoon?
Pretty much the same army as last year, Abyssals. Exciting.
Don't have to put much effort into it.
Nope.
It's done.
Yep.
Just make another list.
Yep, that's right.
Feel like you're copping out.
Yeah,
I'm
that-
going to
that
take
is a
Abyssal
cop-out.
Dwarfs.
Well, nothing else is assembled or painted, so. It's
Well,
what
there
it'll be.
was a discussion with the TOs, Matt and Taz, about me taking a Kingdoms of Men army and dressing up in something like this is a while back.
Yes. No, you were going to be the what was it? It's the
don't
bloody
know.
war machine
Sorry.
called.
Huh?
The war
Beast of
machine.
War?
Yes, that's what you were going to be, weren't you?
The Beast of War.
We were just going to paint you silver, no clothes.
Ah, that's right.
Ah, right, yeah. No, I'll be taking Abyssal Dwarfs because I'm working on them still. I want to take the Edge of Abyss character. I like the look of Dravak Dalkin and his Stone Golem friend. I think that'll be fun.
Yeah, so they're the new ones, aren't they?
Yep.
Yep. Oh, excellent.
So if I can write a list around them, I'll be happy.
Terrific. And I guess for me, I've got the elves, obviously the Dragon Empire Kickstarter that I've received. So just making sure that I can get those all painted up and ready to go on time is sort of a big...
It's not long. It's 3 months.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's an army
It's
in 3
fine.
months.
It's a little airborne, but it's fine. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. If I can't get them done in time, it'll be the Kingdoms of Men without the silver body paint. But
Yep.
yeah, that's it for me. I love this tournament. I've gone to Cancon like you guys for the last couple of years, so it's an amazing one for us.
So I'll be dressing up as that angry dwarf again. If there's anyone who's listening and is attending, can you dress up as well so I'm not the only one? That'd be that'd be great.
I'm dressing up as Spoon.
Poor effort.
Yeah, that is pretty dismal. I dress up as Hangover every morning. But,
All right, next.
All right.
What do we got?
So I guess the next one here is sort of a lead on to Cancon because there's a loose chatter around the world about this new tournament scoring method called Blackjack, or coined as Blackjack at the moment. So we've actually had Mickey Ward off our Twitter, who's asked us what are our original or initial thoughts on Blackjack. Just as a disclaimer, we haven't used this to score any of our games just yet. We'll be doing the first ones tomorrow.
It's fresh off the press.
It is.
And we're supposed to give credit to Ken Dunford.
Yep, yeah, that's right. Ken Dunford and Matt have actually worked on this together. It is still in production at the moment, but they're looking to use it at Cancon potentially.
So for those who haven't heard anything about this because it's fresh news, what is it? Can you explain it simply, Selic?
So basically, it's at the moment there's a 15-5 sort of win-loss, and then the draw obviously being 10. So this will, and just build off that a little bit. So initially, it'll still work on the wins and loss and draws. However, it will be on the scenario that whatever scenario you're playing, it then adjusts the score. So if you won on the scenario really, really big, then it will adjust your score in a positive way. And then after that second phase of scoring, it'll then go into how many units you've lost and what's the difference there. So it's sort of like a 3-phased scoring rather than just a 2. So you won it, won the scenario, how many, attrition that you've got.
Yep.
So it's just adding an extra element there to force you, or I guess shape your behavior to start to look at the scenarios a little bit more. So that's probably a terrible way of explaining it in about 25,000 words or less.
And there's a different scoring structure for each scenario, so it's not like a standard scoring system, which is the same for every game that you play. Each scenario is scored a little differently.
That's right. So there's obviously a myriad of different caveats for each of these scenarios, but yeah.
Sounds interesting anyway. I think, because I don't like the current scoring system, we just put up with it. It's very swingy, you either win big or you don't.
Yeah.
Very rarely it's close in terms of result. So if this can kind of bring it back and have a more accurate representation of how the game played, that'd be great.
Yeah. The old system for me, it was just really disappointing when the game was so close and the score margin was so huge.
Yeah.
It was big. You might lose by one objective in pillage or something, and you get 15-5.
Yeah. Difference for that one thing.
So I think one of the guys that sort of mentioned it, he refers to it, and I apologise for all of our people outside of Australia about AFL, but it's sort of like the final siren's gone, there's a kick to win the game, they just get it and they win it by 1 point, but instead of winning it by 1 point, they've actually win it by 40. So that's sort of how we see the current scoring system. And this is just going to shape it all back to more plainer scenarios. So I'm very interested to see how it's going to affect deployment, affect army composition. So yeah, pretty excited about that.
And seeing as I play mainly to scenario anyway, I don't think it'll change that much. I think we discussed before recording that I probably won't be affected too much about it. But very keen to give it a go, test it out.
Yep.
No, definitely. So we'll give it a try tomorrow night, and we'll let everyone know on Twitter and Facebook how we went. Yeah. Anything else on the Blackjack tournament? I know you guys have only just had a look at it. Pretty hot off the press.
Well, it's pretty intimidating as a whole thing, but when you break it down, it's per scenario. You have to look at each individual scoring structure for each scenario, not the entire thing.
Yep.
That's just my initial thought when I was peering at it just before.
Yep. So by intimidating, you just mean that there's a lot of figures and a lot of matrices because it's for every scenario?
That's right. When you're looking at them all next to each other, that's a lot of numbers.
Okay. But I guess
it's essentially trying to look at all the rules of each scenario at once. It can be intimidating.
But at a tournament, obviously that'll be broken up over 2 hours, 2.5 hours, that you would turn the page and it's pretty simple.
And that's right. And filling out the actual scores for each thing looks pretty simple enough. You just follow each little step and it's done. Anything from you, Spoon?
No, I pretty much agree with you guys. I'm interested to see how it goes. Would love to see it going at Cancon just to see how much of a difference it makes. And we might not see, I don't think we'll see as big a margin between, say, top middle players as what we have previously.
Yeah, hope so.
With any luck. With any luck.
All right.
All right.
Good
Done?
chat. Who's next?
All right. So we're going to just sort of move away from the existing tournament structure, and we're going to.
Hang on.
Oh, just have to
sorry.
break up the
No,
flow.
Sorry,
thanks.
guys.
Sorry.
Spoon, have a moment, mate.
Podcast ruined.
Yeah, it's all over. We forgot to plug Cancon.
What's Cancon?
Oh, Matt Crow just died
What is it? Tell us about
It's
it.
a
I don't know what
tournament.
you're talking about.
in Canberra.
Yeah.
Australia Day
When's
long
this?
weekend, 2018.
Okay. And what
2000.
dates are they? I don't know what the dates are.
I've got no idea.
Oh, you ruined it.
So Australia Day is on the 26th. So therefore, it goes 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th.
Yeah, I can never
So the
remember.
27th and 28th is the weekend.
Cool. There you go.
Where, and
There's your
where
plug,
can they
Matt.
go? They can, yeah, Matt. But,
It's
yeah,
the best tournament of the year.
it is. So we'll put a link on our Facebook and Twitter. So
Mhm.
get on there, sign up immediately. Try and beat Spoon because he hasn't signed up yet. Putting on the scoreboard pressure. So yeah, get to it, sign up.
And
More-
places are limited. It's not like we can just sit there and wait because there's only there's a certain amount of tickets
100,
that the
yep.
actual venue can
Yeah.
give out to.
Yep. So if we sell out the 100, so it's the biggest in Australia so far. If we sell out the 100, we can actually start stealing other games. So
Excellent.
excellent. All right, so there we go. Matt, you're done. You can probably stop listening now. So the next one is, the next two. The first one's from Neil Barton, and I'd love to get Benson first up here.
Mhm.
How far do you think the third edition of Kings of War is off? So how?
Right. Okay, so I was having a think about this on the way home from work. And just from my guesstimation, I would say probably close to the end of 2019, maybe the start of 2020. I don't think it'll happen next year. That's too soon. There's still too many things to fill out. They might start advertising or hinting about it towards the end of next year, and depends on what they're planning on doing with the other systems that they've got. This is Mantic when I say they.
Mm-hmm.
They'll probably start advertising, bringing out new armies, Twilight Kin or something, or hinting, or I don't know if they're going to do another Kickstarter for this, starter sets or whatever. But I feel like it should be an end of 2019, start of 2020.
Yep. Yeah, so I totally concur with that. I think we're looking at 18 months plus.
Yeah.
Purely around, I still think that second edition's in its infancy at the moment. The rules committee is doing a great job, and I feel like there's a lot of area of expansion. And I think
It's picking up a lot of momentum.
Yeah, I think Neil's sort of mentioned that in his question as well. So he said, "How far do you think is it off?" But also, I think it's still feeling really good. So
Agreed. I mean, there's a few things that I'd like changed or added.
we'll
I
get to those.
don't think the annual Clash of King pack or book or whatever you want to call it will fix, because that's what tweaks and scenario change-ups and items only.
Any discussion points on that one, Spoonie?
I was thinking about 4 years from the release,
4
which
years?
would bring
When
it
was
to
it released?
2019.
Ah,
2015 June-ish, I think, from memory.
So you think it should be released mid-2019?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay.
alright.
Bring up the 4-year anniversary, and then
And just bam,
kick it
third
off again.
edition. Drop
Is it
man.
just me? I would think 4 years is an odd anniversary. I mean,
It is.
normally it's like 5 or 10. Not 4.
Seems long enough.
It's a semantic
I'd
thing.
be
I don't know.
happy. Like, I like the game as it is. I'd be happy if they keep releasing those Clash of Kings packs and maybe added, new campaigns and stuff that grow the fluff.
Yeah.
Wouldn't bother me.
So I guess that's probably a really good segue into Damien Parks, I think it was, that asked for a wish list for the third edition, and I think we'll continue on with you, Spoon. You seem to be
Wish
very
list.
opinionated on the wish list of what's going to be included in the third edition, or what would you like to see?
I would like to see army-specific spells, not a heap of them. 2, 3 maybe,
Mhm.
and maybe 2 or 3 race-specific magical items.
Mhm.
That's what I would like to see. That's my wish
This further
list.
differentiates the army and gives them
Yeah.
more character.
Yeah, it gives them a bit of character.
Yep,
That's
I
it.
totally agree with that.
hmm I want more trap units, as they're called.
Trap units.
Yeah, it was suggested that the boom wagon for the ogres, Red Goblin Blaster,
Mm-hmm.
was a trap unit in that if you take it, it actually reduces your chances of winning.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I
disagree.
totally
Personally?
disagree with that one.
In-
That thing
But
scares the
it-
shit out of me.
But I want more random units like that, how it's a random distance in the amount that it attacks, and then the actual number of hits is also random.
Mhm.
I love that risk reward from it, and I wish there was a few more things like that. I want really weak or unusual units that seem kind of low in the power level, but if used in the right way can be really good or really tricksy. Doesn't mean you have to take them, I just want the option.
Yeah. Okay,
'Cause
and
I
I
love
guess
those things.
for myself, I just want that real fluff and that lore to come out in the third edition. I know that's not character specific or army specific, but just to get to know a little bit more about what's going on in the world. I know that that's something that I'm missing from the fantasy world, the Games Workshop fantasy world. So that for me is something I really wish. But to steal Spoon's idea, that is exactly what I want as well. those
Spells and magic items.
Spells and
couple of-
magic items, something that makes your army unique. And I'm a big man of synergies as well, so if I can tie them in with something else to make it work, then that'd be great.
I mean, there's such a small amount of that synergistic thing there, like with some living legends having a particular ability that affects a small portion of an army list.
Yeah.
Like Corsairs for the Salamanders, that character that gives them a bit better shooting power and
Yeah.
Vanguard or whatever.
Mhm.
But I think they need more of that. A few more living legends that have these unusual, funky abilities that affect different parts of the army. So you can think, all right, I have this guy, let's build a list around him, and it kind of plays quite differently to what a normal list of that army type would
Yeah.
play.
Yep.
I would also like the double ones to be less,
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
not as devastating.
How would you change it? I'm curious. Everyone's got an opinion about this.
I like the idea that if you roll a double one, surely it doesn't wipe the army off, or the unit off, but they have a reduced an amount of attacks, maybe.
Mhm.
Or hindered or something. Or hindered.
Yeah, because just hindered. That's who cares.
Okay, so for the people that don't know what a double one does in a game, so I know that there's probably one or two of our listeners that will have no idea what's happening in Kings of War. When you get a double one, what does that actually do?
So if you roll a double one, your opponent gets to fight as normal. So it doesn't matter how much damage they've taken in previous combats. They can countercharge you back at full strength.
Yeah. So if you've got a guy that's taken 20 wounds and he's only got a 13-14 waiver route, and you
Mhm.
roll a double one, he just gets to turn back around and countercharge you with no sort of issues at all.
And it's even worse when you're attacking a horde. They've usually got what, say a 21, 23
Yep.
route, and you've put them on 25 because you've thrown everything you've got at them, and then you double one, and they can swing back with 40 attacks, crushing one or whatever.
Yeah.
Just kill you.
Yeah.
So at the moment, that double one is a get out of jail free, and what you're asking for is that a double one is not a get out of jail free, but you've actually significantly impacted because you've taken a mountain of wounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
Before we move on, what about double sixes?
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
No,
Oh.
doesn't happen to me.
I find it a little frustrating. Say might only be gargoyles is a bad example because that would kill them. Maybe a regiment of something. They do one wound, roll double six, and you're wavered.
Wavered. Yep. Okay.
Uh,
Yep. So a double
I think-
six obviously just wavers everyone.
Automatically waivers,
yeah.
unless they're fearless.
Yeah. I think if you fix one, you've got to fix the other.
But that's not so bad though, because it's not like you can charge back unless they've got Fury or whatever.
Oh, I just find it really frustrating at the start of the game where you can't move your unit.
What about hindered? What if you, rather than wavered, what if you hinder it? So I can understand where the rules committee and Mantic originally sort of went with this, purely around more of the modern day combat pinning. So you've just taken a couple of wounds, maybe you start to panic. So maybe you're not all coordinated. Don't know, just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Mantic,
I would have
feel
thought,
free to
Spoon,
comment.
that you would want some sort of rule or system to prevent those corkscrew charges and the 2mm not
Don't
corner
get me
corner
started.
charges.
We'll be here all night if we go on about it.
Alright.
Yeah,
They're rubbish. Don't do it.
don't do it. Don't
Just
be
because it's a rule doesn't mean it's good.
don't be a dick.
Alright, so the other Damien Parks question there was, and we're not talking about 3rd edition anymore, back into where we are at the moment. And we'll talk to this one as a bit of an overall component. What are the top 3 armies, and what are the bottom 3 armies, and why? So I don't expect us all to bring out
So
3.
we're talking about like power level,
Yeah.
what we think are the best and worst.
Yeah.
What do you think? You can start off.
Ooh. So I think we have to sort of have a look at who's playing what, and it does depend on the scenarios, but I think for one, I think the dwarves are pretty strong.
Yep, agreed.
So I just think that they've sort of inside their list now, they've countered the issue of slow movement, and that for me would be one of the top, if one or two. But yeah, that's for me one of the top.
I would also think the Brotherhood is a pretty strong list.
Yeah, regenning knights.
Abyssal Dwarves I'd put up there.
Yeah, they're also pretty strong.
So you reckon that would be the top 3? So 2 dwarfs, effectively, and Brotherhood?
The elves are good too.
Yeah.
They are. The only issue I've got with elves is, and this is probably me trying to make a list, I find it very hard to balance a list.
Uh,
So I find that you're either heavy on one, or you're heavy on shooting, or heavy on knights, or whatever. But
Otherwise, Ratkin I think is a really
That's
powerful
what I was
list
just
because you've
about
got
to
so
say.
many units, so many scoring units, and it's hard to clear if you don't have the right setup.
where do you think goblins fit?
I haven't seen enough of them played to know. I'd like to see more of them at tournaments, but I don't
Yeah. I mean,
I
they
don't
don't
know
have a
anyone.
huge roster either, so you've got, 3 infantry, 3 cavalry,
Yeah.
and then heroes, war engines, a couple of monsters. So their lists tend to just be more repetitious units over and over with like a lightning battery or whatever, and then you need some sort of ally to try and fill the gap a little bit. But like Ratkin, you can get a lot of bodies out there and a huge amount of drops and just kind of overwhelm the board.
Yeah, well, I think that they're a spam list, so...
But just because you can win with them doesn't make them strong. I think in terms of power, they're not all that great.
Okay. And so the flip side of that coin is the bottom 3. I think still Salamanders or Trident Realm
I
would
was thinking
be.
Salamanders.
And I know that they've tried to boost Trident Realm a little bit, but I still think some of the points, and I know we did the review, if you haven't had our review yet, feel free to go back, but I think the Trident Realm still need a little bit of something.
I think also it could come down to they're not an easy army to play. So if you've been using them for a while, you could probably get used to how they function, their weaknesses, and compensate and work around it. I mean, it's not a bad list. It's just
It's not great though.
you got to get used to it. I
Yeah.
think.
Do you
And
think
once
you
you've
have
got
to-
that down, it's okay.
Yeah, do you think you have to carry too many units? Like, I know that particularly for us 3, we tend to take a couple of units that we just like, rather than being optimal. Do you think that, particularly Salamanders and Trident Realms, you're carrying a few more units than you normally would?
What do you mean by carry?
As in, you're playing them for the sake of playing them, not because you're using them as a winning tool. Like
Yeah,
that.
probably.
Yeah.
That doesn't help.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some cool units in both of those armies, and you think, oh, they should be good because they sound and look really cool, but they're not. And I just can't help but not take them
Yeah.
every time.
And where do you think Forces of Nature fit into the top 3, bottom 3?
Middle of the road.
Middle?
Yeah.
So we've got 2, Salamanders and Trident, and we'll assume that the kin are out of it. Who else do you have in that bottom 3 position? So do you want me to rattle off the remaining? So we've sort of said the elves.
elms?
The elms. Elves are sort of top half. Then we've sort of got goblins, orcs, undead, ogres, basilia. How do you say it? Basileia.
Yeah.
Abyssals, Empire of Dust, Ratkin you said is at the top, the Herd, League of Rordia, and Brotherhood we said was at the top. Varangur, I dispute.
Varangur's pretty strong.
Yeah, Ogres, Varangur would be at the top.
Yeah.
And the last one there is obviously the Night Stalkers.
Night Stalkers. They're a weird one. They can be really strong.
Matchup
in the right
dependent?
setup. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts. Kingdoms of Men.
I would be putting
Ooh,
Kingdoms
yeah.
of Men down there, probably. I really struggled building that list when we did the review.
Yeah, you actually used allies in that list, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Alright, so I guess...
What about the Empire of Dust?
Don't know. I struggled with him because I was taking lots of construct things. Oh, they're probably not called. What are the Ashabdi called in Kings of War? Enslaved Guardians.
Yep.
I was taking a lot of them, so I struggled a bit. But I think Blythe is doing pretty well with the Empire of Dust, so...
Well, good players will play good.
Yeah. So, alright, I'm going to be the tiebreaker here and then go Kingdoms of Men as the top of the bottom 3.
Yep. Best of the losers. Alright, that what we'll do. We'll just have a small break and we'll be back soon. And we're back from that lovely break. Technical difficulties, whatever. How about we just get into the next question? Selleck, who is it? What are we talking about?
Yep, so thanks everyone for the break. Felix Castro has asked us the question here about what draws us to an army or what lures us to an army. Is it the rules? Is it the models? Is it the play styles? So I guess, Benson, we'll start with you. What draws you or what lures you to an army?
To begin with, it's the visual, what the army would look like in my head when it's finished. Playstyle doesn't really come into it all that much. What will happen is I'll start an army, I'll start modelling, collecting it, and then after I've had half a dozen games and realise, I don't know how to make this work, I'll stop. So playstyles afterwards. So it always comes down to what it looks like. Rules I've never really cared about. It's always been a wacky list. Night Goblins was one of them, the All-Squig army. With the Abyssal Dwarfs, I'm liking the fast setup, and with all the monsters, and I like the idea of slaves and unusual creatures that the Ironcasters have made. Dwarves I just had, and same with Lizardmen, so that doesn't matter. But the visuals for me.
Cool. Selleck?
Yeah, I guess I'm a bit different here. I actually go by the rules more. So I'll look at the rules and then sort of go, does that sort of my weird sort of synergy list, does it work with this sort of rule base? And then from there I go, alright, well that's the army that's got these rules. What sort of models do they have? And usually they don't have all the models that I like. So that's when I sort of go off into the greater world of looking for models. And I guess that over the first probably 20 games that I play with that new army really determines my playstyle. I sort of make it work, even if it's not playing the normal way to play with that army. So I guess rules, models, then playstyle for me.
Cool. For myself,
Yep.
usually it's the model range first. followed by how cheap it is.
Cost.
Says the guy with 19 armies.
Yeah, that's
The-
why he
it's-
has to factor in.
It's not only that, but I think the worst part is that if I see a cheap army, it just nibbles at
calls
me.
to
It
you.
calls. It says, I want to be
So I guess
purchased.
what draws you to an army is the price on eBay. That's sort of...
Depends on how shiny it is.
Followed by a bit of fluff, usually. I was always a huge Wood Elf fan, fantasy-wise. And my hours for Kings of War will be Wood Elf based. Demons, I had the demons. I loved Slanesh, and then it turned into a multi-god looking thing for Kings of War.
Yep, very true. Ooh.
Yeah, so models price does help
Yeah.
a bit. And then, yeah, a bit of fluff.
Yeah, I guess the price did come into it for my ogres that I picked up. So it was my second army at the time, and I wanted something with a low model count. So yeah, that was actually a big driving force for me. So I guess
Yeah, I'll admit when I was playing fantasy, ogres was a draw card just because the
Low model
the
count.
amount of models that I had to paint.
Yep.
Wasn't very much. This is coming from Undead, where I didn't want to paint another skeleton. I thought, bugger this. Instead of painting 30 skeletons for a regiment, I'll just pay 30 ogres for an army.
Yeah.
So I guess that sort of leads on to our next question from Bradford William, and I'm not sure if that William Bradford or Bradford William. Somebody will confirm his name. However, what sort of army list pointers would you give for a beginner? So when somebody's just starting out, maybe they're brand new, never played a game, what would you say is the first 3 or 4 things to take into account when building a list?
I would say start off with trying to make a balanced list. So don't try and do anything fancy or tricksy. You're just starting out. You just want to learn the rules. So taking a couple of blocks of troops, maybe a horde, a couple of regiments, take a couple of war machines, a couple of monsters, cavalry if you have the option to do it, and some heroes to back them up. So that seems pretty balanced. It's just a very basic building block, and it allows you to play in all aspects of the game. I think that's a great starting point.
Okay, so just participate in all of the phases equally.
And that gets you
and
used to
then-
the rules.
And then from there start to drop units or build units in.
You'll probably
Yeah,
get a
if
feel
it's-
for what you
that's
like and
right.
what you don't like.
Alright, so I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball in here because that's sort of what I do. What if you're Spoon, okay, so you're looking at the
Curveballs
model
there.
range first, and you're a bit short of money. How do you
Well, then-
start to work with the army list then?
You don't buy it. What?
Yep, so you mean like proxy the army?
Yeah, proxying's good.
You can always, if you're just trying to learn the game, just use cardboard cutouts for the time being. Write the name of the unit on there.
That's if you don't have any miniatures yet. If you're really,
If you're really desperate, go down that path.
Okay.
Otherwise, have something to represent the unit instead of just
Yeah, it's not
words.
fun to play against bits of cardboard, but sometimes it's necessary. I guess one of my things that I totally agree with Benson here that participating in all the phases to learn the rules is probably the most important thing. The other thing that I would say is, I guess, tips for a new army list is to make sure that you've got some speed. I find that speed is something that I find very critical and very important, because it sort of gets you the charge, and you've obviously get to wound a unit before it gets to wound you. And I guess that for me is something that
And you've
I
got to
like to
have
add.
something that maneuvers and can run and take objectives or hold objectives. A static army is very hard to win those counter scenarios.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure, it'll be fine in kill, but it doesn't come up all that much.
Yeah, I find that Kings of War is not really a kill sort of
It's not.
army.
Works
Oh,
best with the
Game
scenarios.
set.
Another pointer I would give is once you have your list, get your regiments or your movement trays or whatever, and just lay out deployment maps for yourself so you can see visually how your army looks on the table when you're deploying.
I do that with a pen and paper usually.
I do
Yeah,
that in
you
an
can do that
Excel
too,
spreadsheet.
then you can do that as well if you're weird. But if you can do it on the table so you got a better representation, then I think that'll help as well.
It's a good way to visualize your drops as well.
Yep.
So just knowing, hey, I'm going to be out deployed here. Okay, how am I going to deal with that? So
if your memory's not great, grab the artifact and magic cards, or just write them on a piece of paper and stick them next to the units that are containing artifacts or have spells, and that'll hopefully prompt you into remembering that you've got those things.
Yeah.
okay, so hopefully Bradford William or William Bradford, that is helpful for you. I guess it does depend how you're going to play your army, but I guess knowing the rules is probably the best step to knowing how to build your army in the future. So that would be our advice.
Yep.
And at which point we'll jump down probably to Nathan Ash's comment here of he's obviously a Warhammer Fantasy player. Refugee, yeah, that's it. And he's asking how best to transition from Warhammer Fantasy into Kings of War, or how do you make your army unique is another one of his questions that he's got for us. So Spoon, how did you transition from Warhammer? Obviously you were a massive GW fan at that point, particularly around 6th edition. How did you transition?
I'm going to kind of push this a little differently. If you're coming from Warhammer, don't expect Kings of War to be Warhammer.
It's a different game.
It's similar in ways, but different in a lot of ways, if that makes sense.
Well, it does, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
The fans at home are just like, what?
What? It doesn't quite work like fantasy, I guess. I love the game as it is. Would love to see it get refreshed every now and again, but coming into it from Warhammer, I think you just need to play a few games with someone that has played before, that can give you a few tips. Start at smaller points levels and work your way up.
Yeah.
That would be my tip to a Warhammer refugee.
Yep, okay. And I guess my tip would be to have a look at the number that's next to Kings of War, and that's Kings of War 2. And just acknowledge that this is only in its 2nd edition, and it's already starting to build and swell this base of players. So let's let the next 6 editions to get to where it is, where Warhammer left and passed away, rip. But that would be my advice, just to acknowledge where it's at the moment in its infancy.
I think you really do need to note that it is not Warhammer, and it doesn't play like Warhammer. You're not going to 6 dice a spell and win the game, or lose your mage.
Yep.
You're not going to have a character that just munches through an entire army. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I don't miss Warhammer.
so other than acknowledging that it's not Warhammer Fantasy, different game sets, obviously building an army, the biggest, I guess, gap is going to be around the fluff and the lore coming into Kings of War. It really doesn't have that just yet. I know that they're working on it actively.
I think they're doing really well with the supplements in the campaign. I think because I've read most of it now, I think it's getting to a good place. Just people need to actually get off their butts and read it.
Okay.
Just saying. Because I've got a lot of ideas in my head for armies based around certain characters and regions within Mantica. Oh, they've got to change that name. 3rd edition, change the name of Mantica. So I am starting to feel that it isn't a system lacking in lore. Yeah, it can obviously be fleshed out. Everything can always be fleshed out. But I'm liking where it's going, and I think it's pretty good. But how do you make your army unique? Just have a quick look at the map, have a read of your army background, and hopefully that can start to generate some fuel for fire and create your own general and its retinue to go with it, and build on that. That's how I went anyway.
And I guess my closing statement to Nathan Ash or Nash, is going to be, don't let the unit name withdraw you, I guess, from what it's trying to do. So if you've got a shooting unit in a demon army, don't assume that that has to be a fire shooting army. Feel free to make it into zombies puking vomit everywhere. That's going to be a shooting attack. And I guess that's another way to, even though that you're not changing the rules to be making your army unique, it's actually the models and the miniature and your vibe and your theme that's making it unique. And how you actually structure and build your list around your own unique skill set.
You have much more creative freedom with Kings of War.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing, and I've actually started to really embrace it in the next couple of armies that I'm creating. So, yeah, I guess that's enough for you, Nation.
Sean Connery in the house.
Ash. Jeepers. So our final question, and thank goodness, I'll continue to drink this beer, is with Heinrich Hammeren. What's our favorite?
That's a really good name, just by the way. That's a really cool name.
Heinrich, he's actually from Finland. So just an FYI, Heinrich, you're from Finland.
Congratulations.
What's your favorite deployment combo, tactic, or trick? And then later on, we'll get into what's our favorite mid-game setup, trick, maneuver.
Ooh,
so we'll start off with deployment. So I think what he's asking here is, don't just set up in a line, but what do we actually think about when we deploy? That's one of our tactics.
Standard is having a fast-moving chaff unit behind a unit that you don't want to get smashed in a charge, and then as you move forward, they kind of zip out in front of the unit because you can move through your own dudes and take a charge instead. I like that kind of layering, having smaller height units up front with height 2 or height 3 units behind them, so you can double charge. That can sometimes get people off guard because they didn't expect a large cavalry unit behind a horde of infantry to charge out.
I do something similar with Succubi and Tortured Souls, Ben. So height 2 Tortured Souls behind the Succubi. Long range charger if I need it. The Succubi are usually pretty good at being an anvil depending on what they're fighting.
Yeah, I guess for me personally, against shooting armies or shooting heavy armies, just making sure that you've set up to take that shot to make sure that you're getting cover.
Having a individual on a horse or something that's fast moving is also can be quite tricky in terms of people not expecting a long distance charge because they can turn before they declare it and then just zip 18 inches across the board and smack something in the side. That's always fun. Basusu, thank you. Half-breed champions are great at that as well. What about mid-game setups?
So
we're in the thick of things now. Combat's starting to happen. Monsters are flying around the flank.
Yeah.
The obvious one is the staggered setup. So you take a charge, and because you've got a unit that's off to the side a little bit, possibly out of charge range, they can hit a flank. Maybe.
So I've got 2 or 3 with this one that I really like to do, and it's the flying. Some people use a dragon, some people use like a peg or whatever, but you get it behind and just make sure that you've got 3 or 4 options that you can actually swing the game with. And I know that's not a trick or a massive maneuver, but it's more of a setup, just to actually. So, what are you laughing at?
It's a squeaky door.
It is a squeaky door, but I guess that for me is a bit more of a setup. The other thing there is the nimble units with surge. So getting a unit that can pivot on the spot, move up, and then use the nimble pivot again, and then surge after that to get a flank is a pretty good
Tasty
maneuver.
trick.
How about you, Spoon?
I don't have many tactics. Probably why I lose so often.
That's it.
One I
We're
come up with
the
a
wrong
while back.
person to ask.
Yeah, probably. The one I come up with a while ago, I don't think I had enough opportunity to use it, but it was my Ifrit with the burn ability, and then that was it blood boil. Is that where you roll the dice equal to their wounds?
Yep.
I like that one mid game because our units had taken wounds already. Ifrit usually did a good job of adding a few extra wounds, and then you had to add that medallion that gives you an extra casting. What's that called?
The boots, isn't it?
No, that's the movement one. I don't know what
With
it's called.
fire, Meridian's
Fire amulet?
double casting or something.
Yeah, whatever the double casting one is. I like that tactic. That was pretty cool. But
Amulet of the Fire Heart.
that's the one. Mid game, that's pretty cool. I don't know. I think mine changes game to game and depends on the scenario as to what I'm doing.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know how to answer that one properly.
I like mucking about with height, so having height 3 or 4 units charging other things that you didn't expect because they can see over stuff.
Yeah, I guess
That's
in
my
the
favourite.
in the same bracket there, also, and I think Spoon, you were the first one to actually use this against me, is the speed 10 people with the extra speed, so charging 22 inches. Does catch a few people off guard, particularly on flanks that you think you're well out of range, and then all of a sudden you've just got this giant big unit flapping across 22 inches, slamming into your flank. That's something that does catch people off. Whether you call that a setup, a trick, or a maneuver, I'm not really sure, but it does swing a game every so often.
I do warn people about that, the 22-inch charge, and I think sometimes the threat of that is enough to put people off.
It's half the board.
Yeah.
The other maneuver I like mid-game is if you're losing really badly, is just flip the table.
So anyone that's played Benson, by the way, you'll notice that he's wins more bloody sportsmanship awards than anyone else. So I'd love to see him flip a table or a board or a board game. He's a guy that would passively play Monopoly. So I don't know how he does it. That is absolutely it. The only other one that we've got. It sounded like you were opening a barn door there.
I've got animals here.
Is one more question from Unplugged Radio, and I deliberately haven't put it onto our questions here because
you
it was
bugger.
You sneaky bastard. Was what would it take for us to fly to the US for a tournament or an event?
Well, it's all about money. I don't earn a whole lot because I can't work all that much. So it's the cost. I'd like to go. Lady of the Lake GT sounds like a ripper of a time.
Go and meet up with Chris. That'd be good fun.
Yep.
Yep.
But it's the cost of the flights. That's it.
Yep. And so for me, I'm trying to buy a house, and it's pretty much like buying a house in New York City. For anyone else. So yeah, that one there at the moment is all about the money, and yeah.
But other than that, I think we're all pretty keen if we could afford it. Someone win Lotto, and then we'll head over.
Yeah. So I've had a couple of people on Twitter. Feel free to contact me if you're a millionaire, and we'll be over there.
Yes, please, thanks. You can sponsor the show.
All right.
What else we got? Is that it?
That's all of my secret questions as well.
Oh, great. Well, thanks everyone for submitting questions. It really helps, because otherwise we wouldn't do this episode. We'd have something else. We've probably got another army review before the end of the year, you reckon?
Yeah, we do. We've got a couple left over as well, so we probably need a few recommendations of which army to do.
And we're going to try and do a more regular schedule, so at the start of the month we're going to try and record, so hopefully they start coming out at a regular time, more consistent time.
That's it.
That's our plans anyway. Do we have anything else that we need to discuss?
I don't think so. I think they've waited long enough to...
Alrighty. Okay. I'm going to say my goodbyes now. Thanks everyone for listening. Yeah. Thanks. See ya.
See you guys.
Yeah, direct misfire blowing up the game. Talking many war games is our aim. From rule books to advice, we cover it all with the best tactics. we never fall. Ben, Summon, Spoon are your hosts every vid. Misfiring, but aiming up ahead. Comment, like, and subscribe today, keeping you notified and up to date. Come check us out at facebook.com/directmisfire or shoot us over an email at directmisfire@gmail.com.
Hello champs, and welcome once again to another Direct Misfire Missive. Joining me today, as always, is Spoon and Selic, as we talk about hobby and a whole bunch of other things, questions from the community. So grab a seat, pull up a drink. So, shh, we can edit in. So pull up a seat, grab a drink, and let's get into it. How are you guys?
Yeah, pretty good.
I am doing amazing.
Great. Good to hear. Let's get into it. It's late. We don't want to spend too long on this because we could talk for a long time.
Well, we
Yes.
can.
All right. So who have we got? Who's the first question asker?
No, we're doing hobby first. You're jumping
Oh,
the
shit.
gun.
Do you want to?
What are we doing for hobby,
Yeah.
guys?
Do you want to just reboot?
Okay.